You're listening to The Other 50%, a herstory of Hollywood. I'm Julie Harris Walker. This is the podcast where I talk to successful women in entertainment and hear their stories. For this episode, I spoke with Stephanie Sanditz. Stephanie is a writer, director, actress, and producer from Broken Heart, Missouri, the name of her feature screenplay that won a Tribeca Film Festival All-Access Award for New Voices in Screenwriting. She recently optioned feature film Dance Party, a body-positive dance comedy she co-wrote with Queen Latifah set to star. Recently, Stephanie wrote, starred, and produced her pilot, The High Life, starring opposite Amy Landecker, Linda Purl, Ron Perkins, and Jesse Garcia, which then won Best Pilot and Best Actress in the IMDB Independent Shorts Festival, and the We Make Movies International and Hollywood Reel Independent Film Festivals, and Dances with Films. She is everywhere. She has just been hired to adapt an edgy female boxing feature called The Perfect Addiction with Constantin Films. As an actress, she's currently co-starring in 37 Problems, which you may remember from when I interviewed the writer and star Lisa Ebersole, and it was just bought by Amazon Prime, Xfinity, and Elizabeth Banks' Hoo Ha Ha, and it was accepted into the 2017 Tribeca Film Festival New Media category. She has her hands in too many things to even list here, but a quick Google search will lead you to many articles about her work. Stephanie is prolific and busy, adapting to quarantine, made some time to talk to me. You can find us at theother50%.com for added features, photos, show notes, and the coffee cups. You can also listen on Apple Podcasts and all the podcast places. Okay, here's my conversation with Stephanie Sanditz. Have a listen. What do you do?
I am a filmmaker, I guess is the umbrella, but I would say actress turned writer turned director turned producer.
So all the things.
All the things. And I'm going to throw in activist, but we can get to that later.
I know. Didn't we all become activists?
I hope so. If not, you're not my friend.
I know. It's like we had no choice. Like my whole life, I just said, oh, I'm not an activist. I'm not an activist. And suddenly I was like on fire.
Yeah. That's good.
Like, okay. So let's talk about your pilot, which I just watched today, which is so great. And I want to know what's happening with it. First of all, what's it called?
The pilot is called The High Life, and it is a loosely autobiographical dramedy about a wayward woman who goes to New York. The logline would be a woman comes back home and tries to find God out of her childhood bedroom. That's the short story. The long story is about a woman who's searching for faith and identity in the modern world and dealing with issues of addiction and bigger themes of racism and socioeconomic disparity. But basically it's about religion in the modern world. And it came about because this is the fun part for all of you to think about. I grew up in a mixed religious family, and my father is a Jewish insurance salesman, and my mother came from a Christian family in Texas and Tennessee and Kansas City, actually, like kind of all around. But when we grew up, it was kind of more about being seen and not heard. I went to temple, but my parents weren't very religious, and Missouri is a very where I grew up in the outskirts of St. Louis is a very kind of red state, blue state. So there was a lot of different factions of politics and religion, and I didn't really know where I fit in. And then living through 9/11 in New York, I kind of denounced all organized religion and did a lot of artistic exploring. By that, a lot of explorations with drinking and some bad behavior that I romanticized through artists. And I also got this job where I was reviewing bars. And so I was to review a different bar a night for an entire summer as I was trying to explore culture. And during all of this, I had an aunt who was the executive vice president of MasterCard and one of the most wonderful, but also materialistic women we knew. She had 3 Beamers and a personal shopper at Neiman's. And when she died, she battled ovarian cancer for about 10 years. And I looked up to her a lot because she was a self-made woman and very empowered, but there was a lot that I didn't know about her. And when I came back home to read her will, we were all surprised that her dying wish was for the whole family to get together, get naked, and hike her ashes to the top of a nudist Buddhist monastery that she joined.
That was true?
Yeah.
There's
a little stretching of some of the facts of how the actual hike went down, but my completely repressed, not groovy family got naked and hiked a Ziploc bag of ashes up a mountain to fulfill a dead woman's last dying request. And so the pilot explored that and how we were all changed that day, which was, yeah, so it was really fun and funny and heartbreaking, and also, just brought up like a lot of different ties. And so I'm just really fascinated with, how people find faith in the face of crisis. And if you look at death, like how it makes you see things differently. And now with the pandemic, I think, I certainly have had some revelations of like things, gotten my priorities a little bit more in the lines. But the pilot, in theory, I want her to move back in with her family. And the same way she explored different bars before, she's going to try to explore different religions to try to find meaning and also get closer to her family. So, but the pilot, if anyone gets to see it, hopefully, has a big old repressed Midwestern naked funeral.
Oh my God. Like the first scene, I think everybody's naked. I was like, now what's going on here?
Well, honestly, the extras are. You don't see any of us. So I think that was really, I produced and, God bless the cast, because it was like, a pilot presentation. So people were doing it for hardly anything. And, it was asking established actors that were, advancing in age to essentially get naked and hike a mountain for no money. We subbed Topanga for Missouri. But it was a wonderful group of people and lots of spanks in the budget, because the extras, which called themselves naturalists, which is interesting, not nudists, they were great. But none of the real cast actually shows any parts. And to film that, it was a lot of creative cinematography and spanks in the budget.
I was wondering how you got all those actors to take their clothes off. So did you produce this yourself, and did you raise money and go through all that?
All of that. I mean, I had a team of wonderful people that supported me. I guess the longer story is I got my start. I grew up outside of St. Louis, and I think we have this in common. I also went to NYU Tisch School of the Arts to study acting.
Go Violet.
Violet.
What studio?
The experimental theater wing. If that doesn't surprise you for my code. What were you?
I was Strasberg and then musical theater works.
I did a summer in Strasberg and in the film and television division. And then I also double majored in writing, which I think that you were women's studies, I guess.
Women's studies, but I don't know if I ever officially declared it. I just took all the credits to have the minor.
Yeah.
Go Violet.
Well, anyway, so I started out acting, and I was in New York, and in between auditioning, which is hard and disempowering, I started writing, and I wrote an early version of a script that ended up winning an award at the Tribeca Film Festival for New Voices in Screenwriting. And I, after that, tried to raise money to make that movie. And that movie is actually a really big movie, and it's a period piece. And it was like when everyone was raising money on Indiegogo, which is a very empowering and stressful thing to ask people that for money.
Terrifying.
Yeah. So I got a team of people, including a woman named Kimberly McCullough, who's also an actress. And we raised about $100,000 that then, after we got a lawyer and got people their t-shirt money back and started a film production company, went down to about $65,000 quickly. And then we realized we couldn't tried as we might, we couldn't get the film actually made for that budget. And so Kimberly took off as the director on TV, and my writing career years later took off in a lot of exciting ways. And so I decided to make that pilot on my own for the money that we raised, since it was kind of in the same world. And it was one of the most, so I produced, cast, helped, design all of the scenes, edit, get the music from top to bottom. And it was probably the most empowering and wonderful week of my life. So that's the high of getting to do, if you're an artist, of getting to actually do what you want to do. So now
I could do anything.
Yeah, no, it was great. I loved being on set. I loved employing people. I loved checking in with, all of the crew from top to bottom. Like, I really loved being the captain or cheerleader, and I believed in the story, and I believe it's touching really. I really want to touch hard issues, but with humor. I think that's what I want to do. So the goal is to keep creating content and opportunities like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I want to see more of it. Are you pitching it to networks?
Yes. It's all kind of weird timing. The day that we had the screening of the pilot for the cast and crew screening was the day that we had to then, WGA had to fire their agents. And so it kind of took a little bit of a hiatus. And then now I'm signed with new representation, and then the pandemic happened. So so we're shopping it around and there's interest. But it's just been a weird kind of time of not knowing how much to push or expose it now, because we're waiting like to see who's buying what. So it's just been a little touch and go. But the idea is, yes, to pitch it and, sell it to your high-end streamer of choice.
Yeah. Someone who can show nudity.
Yeah. And again, there were Spanx.
Well, when grandma jumped on her grandson's back, piggyback, I was like, oh, I hope she's wearing something.
She was, but she was also awesome. You have to know that like the people that kind of signed up for it didn't really care as much. Yeah, Sherry, the grandmother, was wonderful. And Jeremy Glazer, who played my brother, he's working all the time, and he's also like a content creator and great. Yeah.
That was so great. So let's talk about your writing career.
Okay.
Tell me all the things.
Tell you all the things. I kind of backtracked, but it started, I kind of didn't set out to necessarily be a writer, although like I always enjoyed it in school. So I wrote this movie based on my life growing up that I would kind of liken to like my Lady Bird or my Booksmart. And that movie is now called Get Your Heart On. And I wrote it, I told you, as I was acting a lot in New York. And at the time, a friend thought it was pretty good and gave it to another friend. And that friend was Bly Faust, who since went on to win an Academy Award for producing Spotlight. And she gave it to the Tribeca Film Festival and it got in. And then so at the time, this was a few years after like the Hunger Games and Twilight came out, all these kind of like female empowered, that whole like vampire thing. It was like a couple years after the tales of that. And people were looking for female writers. And I didn't really set out to have a career, but a company, Green Street Film, had read my script and wanted to do someone to adapt a young YA book. At the time, it was called The Mediator, which was a Meg Cabot series. And Meg Cabot did The Princess Diaries. And The Mediator was this book about a tough girl from Brooklyn who moves to Carmel and wants to fit in with the pretty normal people, but can't because she sees ghosts. And how can she pretend to not see ghosts when there's the ghost of a hot Spanish cowboy living in her bedroom? Can't. She has to embrace her talents and help save the school. And so when I got that, I was still in not that I'm not tough and street cool anymore, but I was kind of like, the book had like hot pink font and like, I had this attitude of like, please don't give me this job. And like, I went in and, I kind of had this attitude in this boardroom of like, like, it's so obvious what this girl, she's hiding behind her black eyeliner. Her parents don't understand her. It's really like apparent that she's a bigger romantic and she's hiding behind her intellect. And like, I had this attitude of, you shouldn't make this movie. Please don't give me this job. And like, I got the job in the room.
Of course.
An actor can do that. Like if you have that, it's such a horrible, or maybe it's dating too. Like if you like play hard to get, you come from a place of power. So thank God they gave me that job, and they it got me instantly in the WGA, and I got a really big paycheck, and I started a career adapting books into features and really loving it. I think my first pitch though, when I went in, like after that to really like give a treatment, like I think I had a 20-page document that I read word for word in the room, and they like granted me the okay to like just sit there with me. So I didn't realize how lucky I was. So
let's hold on and step back for a second. Mm-hmm. So was this right out of school that this happened?
No, it was probably like 6 or so years out of like acting. And so in that time I acted and bartended. Like I would do a play and then I would bartend for, or write for these, like I was doing everything I could to be a working actress in New York, which was meant bartending and writing for bar reviews and theater reviews. And then as I wrote my feature. So
did you think that this being hired as a screenwriter was like easy?
I think at the time, other writers that went to school for writing don't like my story.
Yeah, I was going to say.
So, I mean, side note, I was obsessed with films, and like, even when I was at NYU, I hid out in the library. I watched every single movie I could. I hung out with the film students. I just, I took the curriculums of the film directors. I was always just like hours and hours voraciously studying film and story and reading up on it. So, but when I got the job and I had screenwriting friends that said things like the inciting incident has to happen between, before page 30, I literally kind of put my fingers in my ears and was just like what? I've dealt with enough competition and like chatter that makes you doubt yourself as an actress enough that I'm just going to keep going with what feels right. So, so I did. So basically I went to school.
And that worked.
Like Netflix is my school. Just watched everything I could. So yeah, that worked. Yeah.
So talk a little bit more about that. So then you were adapting other people's things, but then when it came to pitching your own material, how did that go?
So I was adapting that, and then I ended up getting a couple jobs. The other job that I got was for this film company called Constantin Films that I'm actually working for now. And I did a series of things with them. One was just a dialogue polish on an action movie that they had. And again, that one script that I had at Tribeca, a woman named Mimi Gitlin, who was the executive producer of Thelma and Louise, also thought that I had this cool young female voice. And she brought me in to do dialogue polishes on studio action movies. I remember one of the film's first scripts I read like 20 different times. The girl just said, "You go, girl." So I to say that, but I was like, this is great. It was such a great way to make money. So, and then another big job that I got through them was the Mortal Instruments movie came out. And this was this wonderful Cassandra Clare world. And there was a prequel trilogy that was set in like Jack the Ripper style London, which was really fun. And it was bordellos and like heroin addicted vampires. And I never, ever was a genre person at all, but I really like edgy romance and hard characters. So I kind of leaned into that. And then that movie, I was tied up to do 3 different movies, but the Mortal Instruments kind of didn't do as well in the box office and then became the Shadow Hunters. So that movie chain didn't happen. But from that, I got this other job that was one of my favorite jobs I ever had, which is this property called Beautiful Bastard, which was essentially about, it was a Christina Lauren book about an intern. It would never be able to be done today. At least I don't think. But it was about an intern who has a love affair with her boss. And it was definitely right at the cusp of the Me Too movement.
But we're going to back off of that for a minute.
So it was empowering, but really racy. So I worked with that company for a while. And then after that, that was kind of my jumping off point of going back into adult themes. And then that was, I don't know, at the tail end of Girls being successful, like In Between Girls and Fleabag. And that was when I decided that I wanted to start jumping into TV. And so I started writing a lot of my own, out of my own voice, and a lot of different projects on my own. So I'm like, I think you actually said before that one of the things you want to talk about is like advice to other people. So after kind of feeling down about like agency problems and getting, writing the movie that didn't get turned into it because the prequel, all these things that seemed out of my control, like it didn't have an agent, or I wrote this feature, but then the feature before it failed in the box office. And so now they're not doing my movie. That was when I decided to make The High Life on my own. And like literally just kind of that attitude of, and I also have to give credit to Lisa Ebersole, who's How I Know You, who is the biggest advocate of not needing an agent and doing everything on your own. And she cast me as her sister in a play in New York, and then wrote this series called 37 Problems that she did everything on her own and sold the show to Amazon and to Xfinity. So she's always was just advocating, do everything on your own, don't wait.
Just do it.
So when I just decided to put the wheels in motion, and which also required a lot of help but realized there was a lot of people that were dying to help me. And I did The High Life. From doing that, I had also been developing ideas with Robert McElhaney, who works for Rob McElhaney, who works on It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia and now Mythic Quest. And he and Glenn Howerton had always kind of I'd known, and they had read some of my writing, and we were trying to find an idea that worked out with them. And Rob is also, these are kind of like some of the mentors or figures that inspire me in my life. He's like the number one of do things on your own. And the story of how It's Always Sunny came to be, and even Mythic Quest now. So I made the High Life on my own. And he, I think, kind of also was impressed by that. And we came up with another idea of a TV show called Pyramid, which is essentially a comedy about a diverse group of degenerates that work at a multi-level marketing office in Tarzana. That the log line would be It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia meets Glengarry Glen Ross in an Herbalife world.
Sold.
Yeah. So as soon as I started working on the High Life, he got behind me with that idea, and then we walked into FX, and I sold that show on a pitch to FX, which was and then also subsequently, my husband my then boyfriend also decided to take his photography career in his own hands and got this big job in London, and then we got engaged. It was all this kind of everything happened when I just didn't wait around. Yeah. So the pilot that I sold to FX, then quickly, and not necessarily sure why, there was a mandate change or it just didn't work out. Anyways, it went into turnaround. And so I got the script back, and then just also on my own, just trying to meet different producers or going through the Rolodex of people that I liked in the industry. I reached back out to a producer at Zero Gravity, Ty Duncan and Mark Williams. And Mark Williams is a producer on Ozark. And just by right before the pandemic happened, I had coffee with him, and he also read everything that I had done and saw High Life and loved Pyramid too. So now they've signed on. So the producers of High Life, the producers of Ozark, have also signed on to help try to sell the other pilot that I have. So I've got these two pilots that I kind of kicked together on my own, and a pandemic happened, but I'm hopeful that all of that will find its home again. And in the meantime, the company Constantin that I had worked with before came back to me, and they wanted to do kind of a combination of what I'd worked on with them before. They have this property called Perfect Addiction, and it's a Wattpad YA book, but it's kind of a book about a woman's sexual awakening and also in the boxing world. So it's a female boxing love story. And I'm writing that right now, and it's a feature, and it's been super fun. So my pandemic has been me quarantined with my newlywed husband, writing movies about boxing and love.
Well, that doesn't sound that terrible at all.
Not that terrible at all. Yeah. So,
now, as you were having this whole writing career, were you still acting too?
Yes. I did, in New York, I did all of the Law and Orders, and got my start in Strangers with Candy, which is probably my most favorite thing that I've ever done. And then I continued to audition and act out here, and did a ton of indie films and a bunch of things in the festival circuit. And then the show that I did with Lisa Ebersole, which sold to Amazon, did 2 seasons of that. And, but it's hard. I'm trying to handle it with grace. And definitely I feel like the parts that are the most fun have been the ones that have been written for me, or that I've written for myself. But I am still a hyphenate doing it all. But I think I'm good. I just want to keep busy. So I don't really want to wait. I'm not good at waiting around for things to happen, which is a terrible quality to have if you want to be just an actor and not a content creator.
Yeah, well, I think we got to think those days are over. I think you're right. You just have to make your own opportunities for sure.
For sure.
Okay, now, what do you make of the world? What's going on?
Hold me, and you can't. I want you to hold me, and you can't. In the words of Edward Scissorhands. I think that we're given a big old dose of what we deserve, and it's really scary. I mean, that's really. What do you think of the world?
I mean, I used to be on fire about what was happening with women in the industry, and now that feels like but a tip of the iceberg.
Yes. Before all of this happened, I've been a big advocate of, like I said before, I'm from St. Louis, and I feel like as much as there's problem here, it's a very polarized town there, and also easier to help in certain ways. By that, I mean, after the Ferguson riots, I grew up in this town called Creve Coeur, which is Broken Heart, Missouri, which is a suburb of St. Louis, but it's literally 7 miles from Ferguson, which anyone in LA, like I live in Los Feliz, and Beverly Hills is further away. So Creve Coeur is this kind of, safe suburban community. And when the riots happened in St. Louis, my father, who used to write Republican healthcare legislature for Ashcroft, had 2 liberal daughters, and we kind of turned him on his head. And now he has subsequently become the president of the board of directors of Planned Parenthood. And we also started a literacy efforts together. So
what?
Yeah. And my sister, Lisa Sanditz, is an amazing artist. And so we're kind of, not that we all don't disagree on certain things still, but it's been a really beautiful, empowering political journey that I've gone on with my family. And my father, literacy is one issue in Missouri that people of both sides, Republican and Democrats, like you can't really say that like, no, people shouldn't be literate. So my dad became on the board of, he was working for the Library Foundation. And we found out that the library in Ferguson was closed. And so we did a fundraising effort to keep it open, and literally just bare bones. It was like, I don't know if this goes on air, these numbers might be wrong, but it was like $200,000 or something was all that it needed to keep the Ferguson Library open for 24 hours a day, have food there for kids, and have access to internet and books. So it was like essentially a safe space in the neighborhood when all the riots were happening. And one of the things I did was I grew up with Beau Willimon, who's created House of Cards and wrote Mary Queen of Scots and Ides of March in the first. And so we did a simple formula of bringing him back and having people interviewing him and doing a fundraiser to raise money for the library. And it was very successful. And since we brought back Ellie Kemper and John Hamm and kind of all these St. Louis celebrities, and have raised a ton of money to keep literacy efforts open in St. Louis, as well as scholarships for continuing education. And then during all of this, I'm extremely active in Planned Parenthood and women's health and sexual wellness. And I've really been on the front lines of Missouri's CARE has been really on the front lines of, cutting funds there, and a lot of legal loopholes in terms of how women and people can get family planning, let alone just abortion options. But so we also helped 2 years ago do one of the biggest fundraisers for Planned Parenthood in Missouri history. And then right before November, I did this really cool thing with my father and Beau again, where my dad wanted to get bipartisan wealthy men involved in family planning. So Planned Parenthood and also women's sexual wellness wasn't just a conversation to be had with women, but that like men could also support too. So I flew back home, and we had this private, high-end male donor conversation where I talked with all of these conservative men in Missouri about my, basically saying like, your daughters are having sex at young ages, and like either you can be a part of the conversation or you can deny it happening, and and continue this problem. And it was really beautiful, and we raised a ton of money, and we were supposed to continue and have another big fundraiser in kind of going back to back with literacy and women's wellness. And then the pandemic happened, and now gears have kind of shifted into just trying to, because libraries couldn't be open and a lot of health conversations. So gears have kind of shifted in just to trying to make sure that people can vote and, vote their options. And my dad did this really cool thing where he became a Notar Republic. I guess in Missouri right now, you can't vote, you can't send a mail-in ballot unless you are over 65 or you have to get it notarized. So people are, either have to figure out how to get something notarized or run the risk of going to a ballot place that might get them sick. So he's done this whole effort of now becoming a notar himself and getting other people notarized and making libraries as places where people can easily come and get their mail-in ballot. So there's been a lot of that's on the ground things that I've been trying to do during the time. Otherwise, I went to a couple protests here for Black Lives Matter because that then took over. And I think that you alluded to I know Me Too seems like a world away.
It was a million years ago. It seems like the priorities shift every minute. I want to go back to your father wrote Republican healthcare legislation and now is on the board of Planned Parenthood. That could not be more of a stark contrast. How did you make that happen?
Young when that happened. And so I would think he would definitely I vaguely remember John.
Let's call him. Get him on the phone.
I feel like John and Janet Ashcroft came to her. I vaguely remember them like thinking it was funny to speak Spanish in a Missouri, like a Southern accent. I like just remember them being like, no comprende. I don't know. Like now it all seems so weird. I have these vague memories of it, but my dad sold employee benefits and health insurance. And I think at the time he had the idea that, big companies should provide employee benefits to all that worked there. I think there's just more legal loopholes that have like changed and shifted, and his awareness changed and shifted, and having really rebellious daughters forced him to open his eyes to like a lot of different things. And my mom became more political too. Yeah.
Just I love the headline of that.
Yes. Yeah. But his favorite story he likes to tell is that he did sit next to Jane Fonda at a Planned Parenthood meeting, and she said to him, "You look like you're vagina friendly." And he said, "You have no idea." So from that moment on, and I'm a huge Jane Fonda fan from Barbarella on, that sealed the deal. So
Oh my God, that's great.
You realize like a way to meet women is, become a member of Planned Parenthood, maybe for the
hello. Hot tip.
Yeah.
No, I think nothing sexier than a liberal man.
There. Amen, sister. I make that a t-shirt.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to ask you formally now, what is the advice you have for people coming up behind you?
Just keep making stuff. Don't wait for other people to get your opportunity. Be a really nice person. Don't burn any bridges. Recognize your place in the world. I think there's a lot of noise, and I think now more than ever, I think the idea of being the prettiest person at home and hoping that people will just find you out in terms of actors is just obsolete and probably shouldn't have ever been there. And I think also, if there's anything else in the world that you want to do it. It's really hard.
Right? I know you hear that advice when you're 20 and it's infuriating, and then you find yourself giving that advice later on.
Yeah. No.
And why? Tell the thing beneath that.
I think that it can be really lonely in the arts. And I think that a loneliness and a self-deprecation can come if you're not really in touch with. If you're waiting around for someone to find you out or tell you that you're special, you're not in the doing. And anytime, like it's like two phrases that I like a lot, like my theory as an artist is that I want to comfort the afflicted and afflict the comfortable. So I want to, I want to tell stories that, entertain, but also that have a meaning and like make the world a better place. But I also think that one thing I've learned is how do you gain self-esteem by doing esteemable acts? And it's like you can sit around and feel badly for yourself, but an instant way to feel better is call someone and ask them how they're doing. And I feel like the same is in the arts, which is you can sit around and wait or be mad that your agent hasn't done this or you don't have an agent, but if you really think about what the stories you want to tell and really look at what other people are doing and get into action, I think you'll find out who you really are, because it takes it's a lot of work to write or to get a movie made or get a song made. And I think if you see that while you're doing it and the people that you attract, that you enjoy that, I think that you'll realize that you really want to be doing it, and you'll realize that it's what you're supposed to be doing. And I think if you sit in non-action, it'll be you give space for self-deprecation. And I think that there's a lot of people that I think when they really got down to it, maybe don't want to be right. Like if you think you want to be a writer, good. Just try how enjoyable is it for you to sit in a chair for 13 hours a day and write a screenplay? Because it's hard. And if you like that and people respond to it, then keep going. And if you don't, do something else. Because it's
right. Like, are you actually doing it? I can't tell you how many people I know. Like if you're still in your 30s, calling yourself an actor and never going on an audition.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
I mean, then everyone I know is an actor.
Yeah.
Then you can call anyone an actor. Yeah.
We're all actors.
Yeah. And I also just think like be a good person, be a citizen of the world. Like I just really think that you can't have all your eggs in one basket, and it's all about relations and people wanting to work with you. And I think keeping healthy people around you is really important. I think that's, I don't know, Tina Fey said like a long time ago in her book, like Bossy Pants or whatever. just like surround yourself with people that are better than you or that you can learn from. And I think even from like a healthy, level, make safe choices, take risks, but make safe choices, it can be hard who your crew and who your people are and who your mentors are, is really important. And one of the cool things, if you like how I'm meeting you is, we started this networking Zoom of empowering women and trying to like branch out and help people do favors. And any opportunity I can, I try to like connect dots with other women, even if it was like something that could have been a competitive job entry. I try to introduce a writer or an actor to a producer just because I want to live in the world that I say that I want to live in. And so I just think kind of networking and helping people out is the jam.
It is the jam. That happy hour thing we did was great. And I've done 3 interviews this week from that.
Oh, wow.
It was fantastic. Yeah. Thanks for inviting me. It was great.
If anyone wants to know that, like the formula is that Lisa Ebersole and I had this idea that we would each invite 3 women that we knew or that we thought were inspiring and ask each of them to invite someone else that had like-minded values and ours, and kind of trying to do like half a mix of creatives with half a mix of business people. So we kind of cross-pollinate. And we've been doing it all throughout the pandemic and really helping people connect dots and making new friends. And to be honest, like I don't really miss having to drive to Santa Monica to meet someone on a, so it's been a cool thing. So I kind of encourage people to, use that formula too. So
it was great. It was so simple, but so like full and rich and great.
Yeah. And people want to, some people are too busy and don't want it. And then that's their bag and they don't have to. But I really enjoy connecting with new people that are doing things that inspire me, including you, Julie Harris Walker.
Oh, my goodness. I want to ask you, what is your spiritual practice?
Oh, gosh, it could be better. I think I'm still exploring all options, but I do yoga and I run outside. I think it would be very deeply rooted in me doing kind of private forms of being physical. And then I'm a really bad meditator. I have every app on my phone and I've signed up for Calm 30 days, probably 12 times, and I'm going to get to 12 days or 5 days. So I'm an aspiring spiritual person.
Same.
Yeah.
I have the same apps on my phone.
I mean, I was raised Jewish and Christian at the same time. I go into all of that in my pilot. I think the thing that I like the most from Judaism is that I was taught to work really hard and try to leave the world a better place than you found it, not just to get into heaven. But then I watched Unorthodox and I feel really ashamed of that part of the religion.
Wasn't that amazing?
Well, I mean, amazing is terrifying. Amazing performances, hard. Yeah, it was really hard to watch.
Yeah. What did I not ask you about that I should have asked you about?
I mean, the other thing that I want to say is that like people should also just like, I'm a big believer in having a sense of humor. I take Halloween costumes really seriously. I miss theme parties. I like traveling. Anyways, maybe that's besides the point.
How can people reach you?
You can reach me. And I'm the only Stephanie Sanditz that I know of in the world. And I am on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter. And I'm currently represented by Industry. And you can get me through there. Yeah. Oh, the other thing I wanted to say actually is so I'm gearing up to write my first feature. I don't know if I said that, called Get Your Heart On. And we're out to Linda Perry, who is the lead singer of 4 Non-Blondes, signed on to do the music. And I have an amazing team of female producers. And that's my like big foray. During the pandemic, I think I got quiet about a lot of things. One is just the state of the world that I'm trying to listen to and the Black Lives Matter movement. But also realizing that like life is really short and you only have a few stories to tell and a few opportunities to, get things done. So I am decided to take my first foray and I want to direct my first feature. And I'm really proud of it. And it's really terrifying. And when people can get on set again, I hope that I'm one of them. So that's something else that's happening.
Oh, good. I want that for you too. Is it Get Your Heart On or Get Your Hard On?
It's Get Your Heart On, and it's because I was born in Creve Coeur, Missouri, which is French for Broken Heart, Missouri, and it takes place there. But there's a pun, and you caught it.
Okay. So I wasn't crazy hearing you say it that way.
Heart. But
okay, well, keep in touch so we can know when we can go see that.
Yes. Thank you for having me. This was a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Okay, bye.
You've been listening to The Other 50%, A Herstory of Hollywood. I'm Julie Harris Walker. I'd like to thank Stephanie Sanditz for sharing her story. And special thanks to Jay Rowe, Danny Rosner, and Allison McQuaid for the music. Please find us on your favorite podcast provider and leave a review. And of course, on our website, theother50%.com, all spelled out, for added features, bios of our guests, and the merch. You can also follow us on all the social media platforms. Thanks for listening. See you next time.